Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Australian Indian Radio and Brisbane Indian Times Facebook daily live updates. And today is a very special day, as we all know. Today is Are You OK Day. And as we know, there's so much that we can talk about on Are You OK? And we will be talking all about that. But
and they say no.
Just checking with everyone. Are you okay?
Anything?
Anything?
Are you okay,
being
Dave?
that very special day, we would like to, extend that to everyone that if you haven't already said or checked up on people that you haven't checked up on a while, please do so. Today is that day. We will bring to you a little bit more about that as we move on to the show. But right now, let's take a very quick look at what this 10th of September 2020 is going to be looking like weather-wise. And so with that, we'd like to welcome to the studios Dilraj. And she will be taking us through the weather news. And right now, let's welcome to the studios Dilraj. So Dilraj, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Are you all okay? So, good morning everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 23 degree. Brisbane area is mostly cloudy with high chances of rain during the afternoon and evening. Light winds becoming east to southeasterly 15 to 25 km per hour in the early afternoon, then tending south to southeasterly in the late afternoon. Fire danger is low to moderate. Sun protection is recommended till 2:40 p.m. UV index is predicted to reach 7, that is high. Till tomorrow, stay safe. And are you all okay?
Yes, wonderful message there, Dilraj. And right now, let's see what our Prime Minister has to say on this very important day.
This year, Are You OK Day and World Suicide Prevention Day could never be more important. Gav Larkin, who set up Are You OK Day, and I went to school together. And when Gav was setting it up, he came to see me about it. And he was full of ideas and vision and passion. And I'm so glad he was. Because while Gav is no longer with us, having lost his battle to a physical illness, Gav has left a legacy that is going to be very important to us again this year. We've all been under terrible strain, facing a global pandemic. It's happening all over the world, this health crisis, and an economic crisis that is also happening all over the world, and of course here in Australia. We've faced tremendous challenges. Australians have lost jobs, livelihoods, their businesses, exams and school interruptions, learning disrupted for young children and those finishing up school this year and those in early university. It's terrible stress and strain. Families have been separated. Celebrations, important celebrations and commemorations have been taken away in so many circumstances, whether they funerals, weddings, joyous gatherings, sad gatherings, but all gatherings that are important for who we are as human beings. It's what life is all about in so many ways, how we connect with each other. And this has been terribly and awfully disrupted this year. There's a truth in the saying, a burden shared is a burden halved, and that's why this year more than ever, we can never be afraid to just simply ask, as Gav encourages us to do, are you okay? Are you? Chances are that will start a conversation, and that conversation can be a turning point in another person's life. More than ever, we need conversations about how we're doing. I want you to know that we will get to the other side of COVID-19. Where we hope in a vaccine, we're also taking action, even if one is not to occur quickly, to get Australians back into jobs, to live with this virus and not let us overwhelm our lives, so we can visit our loved ones and the streets can be busy again, and when life can return to what we want it to be. That will happen. It will happen. It may take more time than we had hoped. There may be disruptions along the way. Things may not go always the way we would hope they would go, but it will happen. And we need to remind ourselves of that. The stress and isolation of our times, like with any mental health issue, can be managed if we ask for help. No matter how big the problem, there's help. It's available, it's there. And whether it's our government at a federal level or a state level, everyone is putting the resource behind these important mental health services to make sure that that is there for you. Please think about this question. Please be willing to ask that question. Are you okay? This year, that might be done on the phone rather than in person because of the restrictions that are in place. But in whatever format, it could be online, it could be in social media, it could be in any way that you can find the opportunity simply to show the care and the compassion and the concern to say, are you okay? Because you know, that says you matter. I want to know because you matter. And sometimes that's what people need to hear most, that they do matter and we do care whether they are okay. So log on to ruok.org.au to find out more. And thank you, Gav, for what you've left us. It's been more important than ever this year to provide that help that is available.
Authorised by S. Morris.
And a very nice message there from our Prime Minister. As we know, it just takes a little bit of effort to get on that phone. As we know, this year you can't be, going visiting people, but just stay in touch in whichever way you can, either by Facebook, Messenger, or by WhatsApp, whatever the means. The means doesn't matter. The message does matter. So, check up on people and just say, hey, how are you? I do think about you. And as Prime Minister said, that will start a conversation. And conversation often, saves so many things. So, you could be writing messages, but the conversation is when, resolves so many things. When you're talking to people face to face, that's when some. But do you know that on Are You OK Day, what can you do? There's so many things that can be done. So, on Are You OK Day, so there are many things that you can do. So, ask people that question, are you okay? Listen with an open mind and, keep that open mind all the time. Encourage action and check in on people. So, it is very important that we do that. So let's now, get this official message from Are You OK organization.
Hello everyone, I'm Catherine Newton, CEO of Are You OK? Today is Are You OK Day. In the words of our founder Gavin Larkin, it's a day to think about someone else other than ourselves. This year our call to action is to learn that there's more to say after Are You OK? In a year where many of us have faced challenges, we're more likely than ever to hear a no, I'm not okay. And it's important to recognise that you don't have to be an expert. You've got what it takes. This is about caring for someone in your world. It's about looking out for your friends, your family, your colleagues, your neighbours. There's more to say after Are You OK? Encourages you to listen. It encourages you to help them find some steps towards seeking help or better managing the load. And it also encourages you to check in. It's understandable and normal to not feel so confident, to be a little unsure if someone tells you that they're not okay. But if you learn that there's more to say after Are You OK? And head to our website at ruok.org.au, you can keep the conversation going. When you're speaking to someone who's not okay, value the role of professional health services. Let them know that it's okay to reach out to someone. They may not connect with a psychologist or a counsellor or a service the first time, but to keep trying. There will be someone there to help them with recovery, to help them on that road. There is always hope. Keep that conversation going, because a conversation really could change a life. Now we're going to hear from some of our experts and ambassadors who will help give you some tips on what to say after Are You OK?
You've got to be conscious of things like saying, oh, tell me what's wrong, because wrong actually presupposes that something is wrong. Maybe say something like, oh, please tell me more, or how's that making you feeling? Or, what does that mean for you? If you approach it that way, you give people the opportunity to open up.
It doesn't always have to be, are you okay? It can just be, mate, I've noticed something's different about you. What's going on? I missed you, I haven't seen you, in ages. And sometimes that can be all that is needed to really engage that conversation.
One of the things that is so true right now in times like these is to be able to listen. And the memory of your motivation and your willingness to be compassionate and to listen will live a lot longer in the lives of the person that you have been helping or trying to support than the words that you say.
A simple strategy is sometimes when somebody's talking to you and you find yourself jumping in, put your fingers on your mouth, just sit like this. And what that does is just tells the other person, you know what, I'm going to wait for you. I'm going to wait for you to talk because what you're saying to me is important and it means something to me.
Listen, but listen non-judgmentally. Let them speak until they're finished. It could be 1 minute, it could be 1 hour, it could be 1 day. But by giving them the power to speak and by you just listening, that is the most powerful thing you can do.
You know, your lived experiences aren't someone else's experiences. You know, as much as there's similarities along the board, we all deal with things in different ways. So just being very open to some of those reactions that you might get when you ask those questions as well, to someone that might be hurting inside.
When I hear someone is not okay, it's always to ask, what can I do? You know, and I think it's really important to ask that question as a follow-up, because what we might assume would help someone feel better may not actually make them feel better.
I think it's just a human want and a human need to feel like you're listened to. Even at its infantile level, we just want to connect with one person. So it's super important to, once you start that conversation, to continue to support that friend or that family member. Just to know that you have got their back.
You don't have to have specialised training. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a professional in the field. You just have to display humanity. You just have to care for people around you. Suicide doesn't respect a postcode. Suicide doesn't respect an occupation. As a person in the community, if you reflect later on and think, well, you know, I could have made a difference and I didn't, I think you'd feel very let down as a human.
When I either have an inclination that someone's struggling, or for people that just say, no, I'm not okay, some things I ask them are things like, so is there an area of your life that's in particular is challenging you the most? Or has somebody said something or done something to you that's upset you recently? Instead of making it extremely personal, I kind of broaden their perspective, and that kind of loosens them up, makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, and then they start to open up a little bit more.
Sometimes the problems that come up for people, they develop over a really long time. So the same is true when you're finding your way out of a dark place. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's really important that we're not just asking the question once.
I think now more than ever, as we chart the course through this really hard time in COVID-19 and people are doing it tough, the Are You OK Day message is more important than ever. And the simple act of asking a friend, asking a family member if they're okay can really change people's day, can change their life, and can give them the strength through your support to help them get through what they're going through right now.
As a board, as an organisation, as a family, and knowing Gavin and how he would feel, we are so grateful and so humbled, honoured to see people who want to uphold these values, who share the importance of this work to create a stronger community, to help people with the effects of isolation and depression.
We're calling on Australians. If you are well and able, check in with someone, reach out to someone, and meaningfully ask, are you okay? Suicide knows no boundaries, and it's up to us to be the social scaffolding, to help be a safety net for people. We can reach out and offer support and walk alongside them for however long the journey is going to take. Please keep asking the question, please ask it meaningfully, and please keep the conversation going. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Are you okay? A conversation could change the life. And it definitely can. And as was said that, just checking up on people and saying, are you okay? But this year, the message is, what if someone says, no, they're not okay? What do you do then? how do the conversation proceeds from there. That's what really is going to matter. So it is very, very important that we keep those conversation channels open and talk to people. We know that many times it is very hard, in circumstances which are very close to you, being it a family member or others, then it becomes very hard. And in those kind of situations, I think it's always best to get help from a third party. As they say, you should never ever try and discipline or talk to someone who is very close or within the family, because it becomes very hard. You may be very well versed with all the conversations, and you may be very well trained to do that, but you cannot, when it comes to that close relationship, that family relationship, those scenarios and those rules do not apply, because it will be different. It is completely different than when you're talking to someone else. But the main thing is that, are you okay? Day is today, and today is the day to check on people, have that little conversation with everyone, as we know that the organization is doing so much about that, and they've raised so much awareness, and it's now upon us to make sure that we do the right thing as well, as all of those community ambassadors have said that message, that check on someone. So I'm asking you, are you okay? Yes? Okay, don't worry. If you are, if there's anything that you need to share with us, definitely happy to take your message and your call. My phone number is 0421 388 465. You can send me messages via Facebook, Messenger, or email, whichever where you want to. But it's important that we check on people, as the message is that suicide knows no boundaries. It cuts across religions, cultures, and everything. So you might not know that the next person there is suffering, or what he or she is going through. So that is why it is important to check, and don't go by all the things that he or she does on a day-to-day basis. That's only on the top. That's topical. That's the tip of the iceberg. What's underneath? What's going on in someone's life at that point in time? It is very hard. People many times, outside portray something quite different to what they are inside. Well, of course, right now, let's take a very quick look at what's the update from QPS, as they had the press conference very early today, and then we will look at some of the other issues. One of the issues is women's health, of course, because being Women's Health Week as well. So right now, let's go to this press conference courtesy of Channel 7.
Mark Wheeler, Gold Coast District Officer. Okay, we're good to go?
Sorry, no, 2 seconds.
No, you're right.
Excuse us while they're still set up.
Of New South Wales, and what that means is anyone who's been in those areas in the past 14 days can't come into Queensland unless they've got an exemption. So residents who live in the declared border zone area who are eligible for an X-Pass are able to travel across into New South Wales and then back into Queensland within the border zone area. Motorists with G passes, that's the general pass, they're not allowed to enter Queensland by road. And if they attempt to enter Queensland by road, they'll be refused entry, and then they'll have to fly back into Queensland and undergo 14 days mandatory quarantine at their own expense. Unfortunately, police and partner agencies continue to see people turning up at the border with invalid border passes or with no border pass at all. Now, with September school holidays coming up and a number of sporting events interstate, for instance, this weekend there is a Tweed Pro Surf competition on in the Tweed area, which is in the border zone. We anticipate people will travel to those areas for those events and for September school holidays, and it's really important they understand the requirements to come back into Queensland, particularly those people who reside outside the border zone. So if you're a Queenslander and you reside outside the border zone and you travel anywhere in New South Wales, you will not be able to return to Queensland by road. You'll be turned around at our border and you'll be directed to attend an airport, and if you want to come back into Queensland you'll have to fly in, and then you'll have to undergo 14 days quarantine at your own expense in a government run accommodation. If you enter Queensland via air, you're then up for a significant expense, of course. So what we're seeing since 1 a.m. on the 8th of August, we've seen almost 39,000 vehicles intercepted at our Gold Coast checkpoints. We've seen some 3,600 people refused entry on the road, and we've also seen 13 people at the airport turned around. We've also seen about 750 people directed into self-funded quarantine. So that's the message. Please ensure before you travel from Queensland into New South Wales, particularly if you're outside the border zone, you look very, very carefully at what the rules are. We've seen a number of people who've made that critical mistake, and unfortunately we've had to refuse them entry and they've had to return via air and then go into that quarantine. Happy to take any questions.
Is this surfing event across the border what's spurred on this latest warning?
Yeah, that, and also the September school holidays coming up, and also the number of people we're seeing who continually turn up to the border and we have to turn them away. We're turning away in the order of 100 people a day, which is a fairly high number. The numbers are coming down a little bit, but it's still a lot of people who turn up to our border and they don't fit the requirements to come in. They're simply not eligible to come in. With the surfing event this weekend, it is a broadcast-only event and you can watch it live. So there will be a limited number of people, officials that are able to go to that event. But one of my concerns is that we see people from Queensland, particularly outside our border zone area, decide to go down there and watch the event and then not be able to get back into Queensland via road.
Is there a problem area, say, in particular people from Brisbane who are, doing the wrong thing?
Yeah, Brisbane's been, or the Brisbane area has been our most prevalent area, where people have done things like go over into the Tweed to do some recreational fishing. We had another person go over to purchase some fishing equipment, and those people simply haven't checked the rules before they've left, and those experiences for them are incredibly expensive. They put our police in a really, really difficult situation because, look, our police understand the ramifications at those checkpoints, but they have to follow the letter of the law and they have to ensure that the Chief Health Officer's directions are being complied with and enforced.
And are there problem times? Is it usually weekends, for instance, that you're seeing more people try and break the rules?
Yeah, weekends are our most prominent time, and of course, again, with September school holidays coming up, it's fair to say that there will be people who simply won't read the rules and will go into New South Wales.
So the message there is very clear that we need to be very careful, and if you're crossing the border or if you're going interstate and then trying to come back into Queensland, be careful that there will be consequences. So always check up on the rules. As we know, many times people are not aware and they just go ahead and do things, and then they find out that they can't do this, then they try and do something sneaky, which is then not very good. Well, right now, let's take at this news which has been, on the social media and everywhere. This is about the Battle of the Borders, Queensland Premier and New South Wales Premier.
You know the score. Everyone's revved up because Queensland closed their border, but New South Wales want it back open.
Queensland will continue to have our borders closed to keep Queenslanders safe.
Anastasia Palaszczuk's Queensland wants zero community transmission in New South Wales before they consider it. Cue total and complete relationship breakdown.
Can I be absolutely frank? She has made a decision and isn't willing to talk about that decision and is refusing to budge.
Oh, we're having a chat this afternoon. Okay.
It seems that you two don't have a relationship at all. Are you willing to pick up the phone and fix that?
Ben, it's not through want of trying, can I say?
No, that's ridiculous. She hasn't made any calls.
We have direct contact with each other, and I've reached out to her again this morning, and I hope she returns my contact.
Queensland has done extremely well by relying on expert health advice. Let me make it very clear. I will not be changing that course anytime soon.
I urge the Queensland Premier to consider carefully the impact that the borders are having on our communities.
I will not be intimidated.
And today, as tensions hit boiling point, Gladys dropped the B word.
I do begrudge her. I do begrudge her because New South Wales has got very low community transmission. Why would you close your borders? Why would you hurt your businesses and jobs in your own state?
Even New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard piled on.
I can only express my supreme anger at the Queensland Premier's decision, which is nothing more than base, loopy politics. Having said that, the Health Minister up there is doing all he can and working with me.
Okay. But the border remains shut, right?
Yep.
And political reporter Sam Maiden joins us now. There is an election coming up for Palaszczuk, Sam. Is this just loopy politics?
Well, whether or not it's loopy politics or not, I think there is a lot of politics involved. The Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk wants to win that election, and I think that she's prepared to keep those borders closed if that's popular with voters. Look, I think in terms of having the Health Minister of New South Wales, Brad Hazzard, sort of give you a bit of a lecture, given that he's the member for Ruby Princess, that's a bit weird. But I suppose it's all fair in love and politics.
So do you think if she wins the election next day, borders are open, or is it not that simple?
I don't think it'll be soon after. I mean, the election is in late October, and the Queensland Premier has agreed loosely to this idea of hotspots that's been put up by the National Cabinet that would be working towards having borders open by Christmas. So if you think about, you know, you're really talking about her maybe looking at opening borders in November. Queensland desperately needs to get that tourism dollar through the door. They'll want those people there over the summer holidays. That's so crucial to so many of their businesses. I think a lot of people are scratching their head a bit about why they're not acting sooner, given that it is a state that relies really heavily on tourism.
But she's just saying she's following the health advice, and that's exactly what the health advice says. Zero community transmission, then you open up the border. Are you suggesting that that's not entirely true?
Well, I think that it's really hard to get to zero transmission. If you look at the numbers in Queensland and New South Wales are pretty comparable in terms of daily cases. It's obviously a difference with community transmission. I think it was 8 in Queensland and 8 in New South Wales in the last 24 hours. I think to get to zero community transmission would be, it's a very tough bar, I think, to put up.
Okay. What I don't get, I mean, you're right, the tourism operators in Queensland have been really upset about it. Gladys Berejiklian's made a point of saying it hurts Queensland more than it hurts New South Wales. If that's all true, why does Gladys care so much? Like, why is she so fired up about this thing that she says is really harmful to Queensland, not New South Wales?
Look, I mean, Gladys Berejiklian is a very sensible, pragmatic leader. I think it's safe enough to say that she's not interested in getting into any of those sex parties that apparently you can go to in Queensland when you're not dancing at a wedding. She is worried about the economy, right? She wants to see the economy firing. She wants to see Queenslanders visiting New South Wales and vice versa and get the economy ticking over. And maybe she wants to have a holiday in Noosa.
Don't we all, Sam? Thanks so much for your time.
Our holiday in Noosa would be great, won't it? Yes. Well, right now for the next segment for today, women's health.
2020 has been such a crazy year. It's been a real blur. There's been so much disruption, loss and sadness. And we think of our friends and family in Melbourne, and they're still doing it particularly tough. During this time, we've all been trying to do the right thing. We're wearing our masks, we're washing our hands and maintaining our distance to keep ourselves and others healthy. But there's some things that we might have put off that are really important as women. And that's something we all need to pay attention to. The evidence is that women are putting off their health checks, pap tests, mole checks, mammograms, and so much more. Pathology centres are reporting that thousands and thousands of Australian women have put off their pap smear tests. Even with telehealth, GPs are reporting that female face-to-face visits are down as well. This week is Women's Health Week, and it's a chance for women across Australia to remind themselves about getting up to date with all of those tests and their health. So call the doctor, book that appointment. Don't let it be the year where we say, I'll put that off, because your health is so important to you and those around you. So make the call. I booked my mammogram this morning. Filming this video reminded me that I needed to do that. If you want to know more about Women's Health Week, visit womenshealthweek.com.au. Go on book that appointment now. It's really important.
And it is important to keep their tab on the health, because many times people get so busy with everything else that they neglect their own health. And it is, I know, easier said than done many times when you are very, very busy. But of course, health comes first above all. And that is probably the case in why Queensland border still remains closed. But again, as we can see, there's so much debate, so much conversation happening. You just got to jump on the social media and you'll see both sides of the conversation going on, and some pretty strong views out there as well. Well, right now, it's time to go for the commercial break.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globnetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 सैंडगेट रोड, बुंदल, क्वींसलैंड। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, रियल एस्टेट इज आवर वर्ल्ड।
And real estate is their world. Well, right now we're going to the overseas news. Let's look at Joe Biden and what he has to say about President Trump.
The day that we hit 190,000 dead in the United States because of COVID-19, we just learned from the Washington Post columnist Bob Woodward that the President of the United States has admitted on tape in February he knew about COVID-19, that it passed through the air. He knew how deadly it was. It was much more deadly than the flu. He knew and purposely played it down. Worse, he lied to the American people. He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months. He had the information. He knew how dangerous it was. Now, while this deadly disease ripped through our nation, he failed to do his job on purpose. It was a life and death betrayal of the American people. Experts say that if he had acted just 1 week sooner, 36,000 people would have been saved. If he acted 2 weeks sooner, back in March, 54,000 lives would have been spared in March and April alone. You know, his failure has not only cost lives, it sent our economy in a tailspin. It cost millions more in American livelihoods. This is a recession created by Donald Trump's negligence, and he is unfit for this job as a consequence of it.
A pretty bold statement there. And of course, acting in a timely manner does make a very, very big difference. So let's take a quick look at some of the cases. So Queensland, 1,143. Of course, we know about the 8 new cases. Recovery, 1,091. Deaths, 6. And the total cases in Australia is 26,465, with recovery at 22,858, 781 deaths. Well, worldwide, 27 million. So United States has got 6.3 million. And second up is, guess what? India. Yes, India has now 4.3 million. And Brazil has gone down to the 3rd position at 4.1 million. So 6.3 million in US, 4.3 million in India, and 4.1 million in Brazil. So, you know, those are the latest stats, and India has crept up there. Victoria records 51 new coronavirus cases and 7 COVID-19 deaths. So welcome to September 10th. Victoria health authorities are now looking at the sewage system for signs for further outbreaks as the case numbers continue to trend downwards. The treatment of a dying father has increased tension over Queensland's strict border closures with New South Wales. Health Minister Brad Hazzard is fuming at the loopy politics, as he says, and the Queensland has recorded its biggest spike in 5 months. So Queensland has recorded its biggest spike in 5 months. Meanwhile, the UK has brought back some restrictions as case numbers grow, and the worldwide death toll has now hit 900,000. So as we have seen, first, second, and the reoccurrence of that cases in UK, and restrictions have been brought back. And Victoria, as we announced before, 51 new cases, and as death topped 700, and that dying dad in Queensland was only allowed to say goodbye to one of his 4 children due to the border closures. New South Wales hospital outbreak has grown, 8 new cases in Queensland, and of course that restriction right there in UK. Well, we know that Tour de France is happening, and Sleb Ewan, beats Peter Sagan by millimeters to win the stage 2 of the Tour de France. Let's take a look.
Ça se joue sur la ligne pour quelques Peter Sagan qui se fera un passage également sur la droite. Et dans les derniers instants, il y a Caleb Ewan au jeté de vélo. C'est l'Australien qui se... Et 4 coureurs sur la même ligne. Oh, cette photo finish fera date. Et oui, c'est confirmé. L'Australien Caleb Ewan.
I'm super happy with my 2 stage wins. One just takes the pressure off, and then after the first one you always want a second, and now I'm sure I'm going to want a third, especially in Paris. So yeah, I hope to get through the mountains all right and have another sprint in Paris.
L'Australien de 26 ans, Caleb Ewan, 2e victoire sur ce Tour de France pour le sprinter.
Wonderful feeling to be up there, and so right now looking at the trade relations between Australia and China. As I mentioned yesterday, that with those journalists that we showed you yesterday, now there is tension, with Australia and China's relationship took turn worse than those 2 journalists were forced to flee the country. So let's take a look at that news there.
We crush about 20,000 tonnes of fruit a year, and that produces about 15 million litres. We export about 70% of the production, and about half that is to China.
David Harris has been selling wine to Chinese customers for almost 20 years. Back then, he saw huge growth potential in his key export market.
Australia's been by far the most successful country in establishing a wine business into China.
But now his business is accused of flooding the Chinese market with cheap wine.
I was driving up to the winery and someone rang me and said, "Have you heard you've been accused of dumping wine?" So I was a bit shocked. I mean, we're just simply not in the business of making wine, putting it in a bottle and selling it below the cost.
9 other companies are named in the trade dispute, including Treasury Wine Estates, the maker of Penfolds. If Chinese authorities find Australia is selling wine below cost, the industry could face tariffs of up to 200%.
I think it would probably shut that market down overnight, and that would be a sort of catastrophe right down through to the individual grower.
In a broader investigation, China argues some government grants to the industry amount to a subsidy, giving Australian wine an unfair market advantage. But the industry points out it receives no direct subsidies.
We're not in a trade war, but we certainly see difficulties in the relationship that are making life harder for a number of different export industries.
Planted 1,500 hectares. So it is going to be very, very hard. And as we know, there's quite a lot of things that have been happening. And Helen Swazek, who was the CEO of Australia-China Business Council, has been she has stepped down. Let's hear from her what her take is on this situation.
Well, despite the frosty relationship, China's share of Australian exports has risen to an all-time high of almost 50%, driving months of consecutive trade surpluses. Helen Sobczak just stepped down as the CEO of the Australia-China Business Council. She says business is crucial to the restoration of the fractured relationship. Helen Sobczak, thank you so much for your time. In your view, how safe is it for Australian businesses to be operating in China right now?
Well, this week, there's been a lot of concern this week with what's happened to Bill Birtles and to Mike Smith. And it's very unfortunate that there are now no Australian journalists that are based in China. It means the information that we are receiving here is now very limited. But Australian companies, we've had this threat with China for many years. So in some respects, it's nothing new. It's something that Rio Tinto dealt with. It's something that Crown Casino has dealt with. But it seems that things are very much heightened this week with political tensions strained. Having said that, we're still reaching records in bilateral trade between Australia and China. So Australian companies still remain cautiously optimistic about the great potential of the China market.
In early July, the Australian government changed its advice in relation to China to referring to the risk of arbitrary detention based on national security grounds. And this obviously was heightened with the changes that came through in Hong Kong as well. The government recommends do not travel. What does that mean for businesses who have staff and employees in China now? Should they be bringing them home?
Well, we've got travel restrictions at the moment during COVID-19. So to a large extent, that warning when it came in July, it was heeded by business, but it was almost academic because there's no potential travel. China's a type of place that Australian business are keen to travel to. The way the Chinese do business, they like people-to-people connections. So Australian businesses have been frustrated by the travel restrictions. The travel warnings, obviously this week, probably people will be paying more attention to it. But with respect to people on the ground, I mean, there are tens of thousands of Australian expats living in China, and they have been there since the 70s. So it will be business as usual with our largest trading partner for those companies until they see a real threat for their staff.
So you don't think that the escalation that we've seen in the tensions, the warning that we had overnight from Maurice Payne, that businesses and anyone in China should be very cautious. You don't think Australian businesses will actually act on that? They're not going to take it as a real and direct threat to any staff that they have there?
I think the risk is heightened, but it will be part of...
As we've had, the risk has been heightened. Now for the next news. The next news is regarding Facebook. Yes, like it or hate it. So Facebook, which is the biggest social media platform in this world today, and of course we know it has always come under a lot of criticism and many times there's frustrations between many things. But of course, if it wasn't for Facebook, we wouldn't be streaming live today here. So Facebook is threatening to shut down the sharing of Australian news in its platform. So there we go. Strange developments that are happening there. Let's take a look at that news.
This man controls the biggest social media company on the planet. Mark Zuckerberg is worth over $100 billion US.
Facebook is really different from other companies. All of the power essentially rests in the hands of the supreme leader, and that is Mark Zuckerberg.
We use our phones to connect with the people we care about.
Facebook itself is like a cult. Mark is this larger-than-life character.
We are concerned about the extent to which the digital platforms are places where misinformation, disinformation is disseminated.
Our services are about connection, and our business model is advertising, and we face intense competition in both.
After 16 years of relentless growth, Facebook's unparalleled dominance in the market is being questioned.
Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram are the most now downloaded apps of the last decade. Your company, sir, owns them all. And we have a word for that. That word is monopoly.
Almost half the world, some 2.7 billion people, actively use Facebook. More than half the Australian population uses the social media site.
Facebook thinks that it is a sovereign nation. I mean, they have, what, almost twice as many active users as there are people in China? So Mark Zuckerberg says, I'm not actually an American company. I'm Facebook. And America serves me, not the other way around. That's really unhealthy. I was, for 3 years, from 2006 to 2009, an advisor to Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. He's incredibly smart. He works really hard. I think he cares deeply.
Facebook was started in 2004.
Roger McNamee is an early Silicon Valley investor turned author and trenchant critic of the social media behemoth.
It's built around concepts that, at the moment, are undermining the public health, democracy, privacy, and competition in the United States and elsewhere around the world.
He argues that political disinformation campaigns on Facebook played a crucial role in the election of Donald Trump.
I reached out to Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg in October of 2016, before the US presidential election, to warn my friends, to say, guys, there's something about the culture, the business model, and the algorithms at Facebook that is allowing bad people to hurt innocent people. At that point, I realized this company, they're not interested in doing the right thing, but they're not actually interested in that. They're much more interested in power.
But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, for foreign interference in elections, and hate speech.
So many shocking aspects of the Cambridge Analytica and Facebook story. And I mean, one of the shocking things about it is that Facebook lied about what had actually happened.
Always had this very sort of rich working class culture.
Guardian journalist Carol Cadwallader believes.
So Facebook is there, and it is there to stay by the looks of it. And the thing is that the countries will have new laws and regulations, of course, as there was mentioned, about hate speech, false news, and a lot of propaganda, and of course political issues there as well. Well, right now it's time to finish up for today. Let's quickly take a look at the events. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I need to leave you for today. It's been wonderful having your company, but don't forget that
it's Thursday, September 10.
So,
and this year, the message is
today,
there's more.
and we'd like to make sure that everyone's okay. Please do check up on your family and friends. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me.